When it comes to pairing wine and food, it's absolutely true that what we eat can change the way our wine tastes, and our wine can change the way our food tastes too. I can think of no better way to illustrate this than to show how simple components that we use in cooking, like salt and sugar, can change the personality of the wines we're serving. To do this, let's taste two different wines side by side first. Our first wine is a Sauvignon Blanc from California, and like many Sauvignon Blancs, it's very dry, very tart, has almost a lemon-lime style of acidity to it, a medium-bodied white wine. When we compare this to the next wine, our Alsace Pinot Gris from France, the Pinot Gris is noticeably darker in the glass. On the nose, it smells riper, and when we taste it, it feels more texturally rich, but also a little bit less tart and more noticeably sweet. We have a hint of noticeable sugar right on the tip of the tongue. Now, let's remember how these tasted on first impression and go back and see if we can interfere with our sensory perception just by introducing one or two simple ingredients. Take a pinch of salt. You don't need much. Get it right on your tongue as if you were doing a shot of tequila. And let those crystals dissolve. Once they're gone, go back and take another sip of the first wine, our Sauvignon Blanc. It's noticeable right away that the wine seems a lot less acidic now than it did on first sip. Why? Because salt and acidity are both perceptions that we get through our taste buds, but they compete with one another. They can't be perceived at the same time. And this is very important to remember because the vast majority of the foods that we eat are seasoned with salt, quite a lot of salt sometimes. And salt has this dramatic, noticeable effect on the acidity of wine. So much so that sommeliers and chefs and professionals in the wine trade often deliberately choose a wine that tastes a little more tart, a little too sour by itself, knowing that once the food is served, once the dish comes to the table, the wine will seem just right. This time I want you to take a taste of honey. You don't need a lot, just a little dab on the tip of your tongue. And go back and try the same wine, the Sauvignon Blanc, again. The difference is dramatic. Now the wine tastes very sour, even more acidic than it did on first taste, simply because the sugar is making it seem more aggressively acidic and drier at the same time. Generally speaking, sugar content in food makes it harder to pair in a flattering way with dry styles of wine, like most reds or this Sauvignon Blanc. But it does work well with one thing. If you get a little more honey, and this time try the Pinot Gris instead. It's much, much more pleasant here. It makes the Pinot Gris taste drier, less sweet. But the effect of that kind of toothpaste and orange juice sourness that we had with the Sauvignon Blanc is no longer a factor. Salt blocks acidity, and sugar blocks sugar. So sweetness in food, whether it's the mild sweetness of ketchup or the intense sweetness of sweet and sour sauce, is going to make your wine taste less sweet because our senses can't process two sources of a competing message. When you go to the movies, they don't turn up the lights so you can see the screen better when the movie starts because our senses perceive one source of a sensation to be very strong and vivid, but if there are two, they take away from each other and are perceived in a kind of balancing, blocking way.